Present, 11:42 p.m. That sound wasn't a knock. It was more like a sledgehammer trying to smash through the fake peace of this upscale neighborhood. Bang, bang, bang. Our $5,000 oak front door rattled in its frame, dust shaking loose and drifting down onto the cold marble floor. Open up. We know you're in there, Brad. A gravelly voice with the bite of New Jersey back alleys tore straight through the quiet night. I stood at the foot of the staircase, fingers clamped around a blue hardcover binder, the gift I was planning to hand my husband tonight before an uninvited guest showed up. Looks like this surprise party just got an extra set of attendees. And Brad? My husband? The man who constantly puffed up his chest about being the provider, the successful businessman, the one who loved lecturing me about what it meant to be a real man? He was cowering behind me. Literally. Brad's sweaty hands dug into my shoulders, nudging me closer and closer to the door that was shaking like it might come off its hinges. His breath reeked of expensive scotch and that sour, unmistakable stink of fear. Sarah. Babe. You go open it. Brad hissed through clenched teeth, his voice trembling so hard it cracked. It's probably a mistake. You're a woman. They won't do anything to you. Just talk to them. Tell them I'm not home. I turned and looked him dead in the eyes. Under the dim glow of the crystal chandelier in the foyer, Brad looked pathetic. Wrinkled Armani suit, tie crooked, and the handsome face he used to con the world now drained of every last drop of color. You want me to open the door for loan sharks, Brad? I asked, so calm I surprised even myself. You want to use your wife as a human shield? No, I mean, you're better at talking. Go, Sarah, they're about to break it down, he shouted in a panic as a loud crack sounded from the hinges. I smirked, cold. Brad had no idea I'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. Not the moment my life got threatened. The moment his mask finally shattered. I brushed his hands off my shoulders, flicking at my blouse like I'd just touched something filthy. Fine, Brad, I whispered. Let me show you how a real man would handle this. Or at least, how a woman who's sick of cleaning up your messes does it. But before that door flies open, let me tell you how I, a rule-following senior CFO, got pulled into this chaos with a man whose only assets were a slick mouth and an ego bigger than the national debt. Flashback 3 years earlier, the start of the illusion. It started with the shine. Brad was always good at shine. When we met, he was a promising real estate sales guy. I was an auditor on the fast track. I fell for his passion, which I later learned was impulsiveness. I was practical. Brad was a dreamer. I thought we balanced each other out. Deadly mistake. After we got married, my career took off. I worked 70-hour weeks, pinched pennies, invested smart, and built a rock-solid financial foundation. I bought this house. The investments were in my name. Brad? He job-hopped nonstop. Every time he failed, it was the idiot boss or a market that didn't understand his vision. But he was incredible at spending my money to build the image of a successful gentleman. Sarah, you have to understand, image is everything, Brad would say, while swiping my credit card for a $4,000 set of golf clubs. I need these to network with VIP clients. It's an investment. And the peak of that idiotic investment hit 3 months ago. It was a gorgeous Saturday afternoon. I was on the porch reviewing my retirement portfolio when an engine roar ripped through the quiet of our street. A low-slung sports car, neon blue and obnoxiously bright, swung around the cul-de-sac and slammed to a stop in front of our garage. A McLaren. Not a model. The real thing. The doors popped up like wings and Brad stepped out in Ray-Bans, arms wide like he'd just won the lottery. "Surprise, babe," he yelled, grinning brighter than the headlights. I dropped the iPad in my hands. My chest tightened. Not from happiness, from the very specific panic a finance person feels when a massive rolling debt appears in their driveway. Brad, what is this? I walked toward him, my voice shaking. Where did you get the money for this? Don't worry about it, honey. Brad patted the hood like it was a prized racehorse. I just closed a huge deal. Massive. This is my reward. And yours too, so you can roll up to the grocery store in style. Grocery shopping in a McLaren? He'd lost his mind. What deal? Why haven't I seen anything hit our joint account? I pressed, eyes narrowed. Uh, bank processing. Takes a minute. I used a little leverage. People call it bridge money. You're in finance. Why are you so rigid? Brad waved me off, dodging my stare. He immediately pulled out his phone to take selfies with the car, hashtagging Kshar Grindset Haas Success Posh McLaren Life. I was suspicious then. I just couldn't imagine the truth was 1,000 times worse. I started digging quietly. As a CFO, tracing money is my home turf. And what I found wasn't a huge deal. There was no deal. Brad had been fired from the real estate company 4 months earlier for his arrogant attitude. To keep up the glossy facade and impress his friends, he borrowed from everywhere. When the banks shut him down, he turned to alternative funding. Let's call it what it was. Loan sharks. He borrowed $200,000 in cash at a brutal rate just to put down money and lease this car. Plus bankroll expensive parties to flex on the opportunists he called friends. And the worst part? In the loan agreement I found as a screenshot buried in his junk email, Brad filled in the guarantor's name. Not his parents, not his siblings, me, Sarah Jenkins. But he made a deadly mistake, the kind arrogant people make when they can't be bothered to read a contract. He thought forging my signature would be enough. He didn't know I'd set up a tight credit monitoring and asset protection system from day one of our marriage, a secret weapon, sitting quietly in a bank-safe deposit box, waiting to be activated. Back to the present, bang. The door finally gave. Wood splintered everywhere. 3 big men stormed into the foyer. The one in front was bald, tattoos crawling up his neck, a metal baseball bat in his hand. Hey, Brad, the bald one sneered, flashing ugly gold teeth. Your extension's over. I'm here for the car, or I'm here for your life. Your choice. Brad let out a strangled scream, and in the most cowardly second of his life, he shoved me hard toward the bald man. There! My wife! Brad yelled, his voice cracking with terror as he pointed at me. She has all the money. She's the guarantor. Go after her. Don't hit me. I stumbled forward, right to the bald man's feet. He looked down at me, then up at Brad, disgust clear on his face. But I didn't fall apart. I braced myself, smoothed my robe, and slowly lifted the blue folder in my hands. I stared straight into the bald man's eyes, completely unafraid, and said, Evening, gentlemen, I've been expecting you all night. We need to talk about the fact that my husband just committed illegal home invasion. To understand why I didn't shake in front of a bat-wielding thug, you need to know what the last 6 months were like. It wasn't a marriage. It was a poker game where Brad thought he had a royal flush, when in reality he didn't even know the rules. Brad didn't change overnight. It was like mold, spreading from the corners and eating the whole house from the inside out. After the McLaren, Brad started living like he was king of the world, and I was just the treasurer keeping the vault. He started coming home later, soaked in alcohol and someone else's perfume. Cheap, overly sweet stuff that I knew didn't belong in any corporate boardroom. I have to network, Sarah, Brad snapped whenever I asked about his hours. You sit at home with your Excel spreadsheets. You don't understand how the world works. Relationships are currency. And the way he networked? Last month, I found out he'd fired our elderly gardener, the man who'd taken care of our yard for 5 years. Why? He's too old and slow. He doesn't match the energetic image of this house. Instead, Brad hired a new landscaping company, or more accurately, he hired a girl named Tiffany, 22 years old, always in tiny crop tops and with gardening knowledge about equal to my cat's knowledge of particle physics. I kept seeing Tiffany work by sprawled out on a lounge chair by our pool, while Brad, my busy husband, carefully rubbed sunscreen on her under the excuse of supervising staff. What would a normal wife do? Run out screaming? Start a fight? Cry? No. That's what powerless people do. I'm a CFO. I don't react with emotion. I react with data. Instead of making noise, I launched Operation Silence is Gold. I installed hidden cameras not only in the living room, but also near the pool and the garage, disguised as smoke detectors and motion sensors. I bought a coin-sized GPS tracker and tucked it under the seat of the McLaren he loved more than his own life. Every night, while Brad snored after his debauched parties, I sat up, opened my laptop, and did my real job, auditing his life. I downloaded every bank statement and credit card record, including the cards he secretly opened in my name and hid. I matched each transaction to the GPS data. October 12th, $5,000 cash withdrawal at an ATM near a casino. The excuse to his wife. Investing in a secret tech startup. October 20th, a $2,800 charge at a luxury handbag boutique. I never received a bag, but Tiffany was carrying a brand new one in her Facebook check-in photos. November 5th, a $10,000 transfer to an account called Fast Financial Support Services. That was the beginning of the loan shark hell he had now dragged to our front door. The more arrogant Brad got, the more he mistook my silence for stupidity and submission. See, I handle everything just fine, Brad bragged at dinner, chewing on Wagyu steak that I paid for while swiping on Tinder right in front of me. He thought I couldn't see the reflection in the window. I'm about to expand. I need more capital. I'm thinking of leveraging this house for a big loan. You'll sign the paperwork, okay? It's just a formality. My blood ran cold, but my face held my corporate smile, the one I use when I'm firing employees for fraud. Sure, honey, I said softly, pouring him more wine. Bring me the papers and I'll review them. You know me. I'm a slow reader. Read what? Just sign it. Stop making things complicated, he barked, slamming his hand on the table. The gentleman mask dropped, revealing an incompetent tyrant. He thought he was controlling me. He didn't know every scream, every stolen dollar was being logged into a double encrypted cloud folder called Project Freedom. But the worst humiliation was last week. I got home early from a business trip. I walked into our bedroom and caught Brad digging through my jewelry box. He was holding my pearl necklace, the only heirloom my grandmother left me, and shoving it into his suit pocket. "What are you doing?" I asked, voice like ice. Brad jumped and almost dropped it. Then his slime reflex kicked in. Uh, I I was going to get it polished for you. Your birthday is coming up. I wanted to surprise you." My birthday had been 6 months ago, and the necklace didn't need polishing. It needed protection from filthy hands. "Give it back." I held out my hand. "You don't trust me? You think your husband is stealing? You're paranoid, Sarah. Go see a therapist." Brad screamed, tossing the necklace onto the bed before storming out and slamming the door. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to Brad whisper on the phone in the next room, promising someone that the money's coming soon. My wife is so stupid. I'm about to trick her into signing the mortgage papers. He didn't know this house could never be mortgaged by him. And he'd forgotten something even more important than money. A contract. Not a typical prenup. Brad tore it up in a drunken rage 2 years ago and thought that was the end of it. But he forgot about another document he signed when I helped him set up his fake little company. A document titled Asset and Liability Separation Agreement with Limited Personal Responsibility and Disclosure Clause. That was my secret weapon. A yellowed piece of paper sitting in a bank vault, loaded with fine print sharper than any knife. A legal trap I'd set from the beginning, in case this day ever came. Brad thought I was a lamb he could shear. He had no idea this lamb was a wolf in disguise, and wolves don't forget. My patience hit bottom tonight. When the sledgehammer pounding started, I knew my moment had arrived. I wasn't just opening the door for the creditors. I was opening the door for Brad's destruction. Back to the living room. Present. The bald man with the bat stared at me. He looked thrown off by how calm I was. He was used to wives crying, begging, fainting. He wasn't used to a woman in silk pajamas standing with her arms crossed, looking at him like he was a broken financial report. Home invasion? What the hell are you talking about? He growled, trying to reclaim the intimidation. Your husband owes me 200 grand principal and interest. I don't care about rich people law. Pay up, or I smash this house, and I smash your husband's legs. Brad crumpled behind me, tugging at my sleeve. Sarah, pay them. There's cash in the safe. Give them everything. I turned to Brad one last time with the eyes of a wife. From this second on, I was nothing but a creditor to him. Shut up, Brad, I said. Not loud, just final. Then I turned back to the bald man and smiled slightly. Listen, you have the wrong target. Brad doesn't own this house. He doesn't own that McLaren outside. And most importantly, I lifted the blue folder higher. He doesn't even own himself anymore. Under this document, his life belongs to me right now. The air in the living room thickened, heavy like a storm about to break. Brad's cheap perfume mixed with the bald man's cigarette stink into something nauseating. The bald man, the name on the ID I glimpsed in the wallet clipped at his belt said Tony, lowered the bat a little. He narrowed his eyes at the blue folder, then laughed. Harsh. Dry laughter loaded with threat. You gotta be kidding me, sweetheart. Tony tapped the bat against his palm. You think a piece of paper is gonna save your husband's legs? I do business in cash, not in lawyer paperwork. Behind me, Brad started finding a little courage the moment he saw Tony lean into aggression. He lunged forward, voice shaking but accusatory. Exactly, Sarah. Stop playing games. Pay them. You have an emergency fund. Don't let them hurt me. I didn't even glance at Brad. I walked calmly to the glass coffee table in the center of the room and set the blue folder down, gently, but with authority. Click. The sound snapped in the silence. Tony, I get it. You're a businessman, I began, as steady as if I were presenting to a board. And the first rule of business is, don't chase a bad debt without collateral. What are you saying? Tony stepped closer, his shadow swallowing me. I'm saying. I flipped open the folder, my dark red nails pointing to a bolded line. You've been played. Not by me, by the coward standing right there. I turned the folder toward Tony. It was a copy of the loan agreement Brad had signed with Tony's crew. Look at the collateral section. Brad listed this mansion and the McLaren, right? So what? I'll take the house. Tony growled. Unfortunately, I smiled, sharp as a scalpel. Brad doesn't own this house. He doesn't even own the doorknob. I slid out another document. The property deed and title. This home is solely owned by the Jenkins Family Trust, with me as the only trustee. It was purchased with my inheritance and separate premarital funds. Brad is nothing more than a permitted resident. Brad's face drained. What? But you said after we married everything was ours. You lied to me. I never said that, Brad. You just assumed it because you're too lazy to read the tax documents I have you sign every year, I said, flatly. Then I looked back at Tony, whose confidence was starting to wobble. And about the McLaren, I continued, pulling out a stack of printed emails. Brad leased that car. It belongs to a luxury rental company in Miami. He doesn't own it. If you take it, you'll get chased for theft of corporate property, not a civil dispute. Do you want the FBI sniffing around because you stole a rental? Tony snapped his head toward Brad. The disgust on his face turned into furious rage. He realized he'd just handed $200,000 to a broke clown based on pure bragging. Son of a... Tony hissed, gripping the bat tighter. You told me you were a business owner. You told me you had million-dollar assets. I... Brad stammered, backing up, tripping over the expensive Persian rug and collapsing onto the floor. Sarah, help me. Tell him you'll pay. You're my wife. State law says spouses share debts. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The final nail in my marriage's coffin. Sure, state law covers marital property, I said with a sugary tone. But Brad, you forgot about my secret weapon, didn't you? I flipped to the last page of the folder, a yellowed sheet with Brad's sloppy signature at the bottom. 3 years ago, when you begged me to invest in your little startup, I agreed. With one condition. Remember? You signed a document titled Joint Liability Waiver and Marital Asset Separation in the Event of Financial Fraud. Brad's eyes went wide. He vaguely remembered. Back then, he was drunk on the fantasy of being a CEO. He signed without reading, thinking it was just account-opening paperwork. I read out Clause 4.2. In the event Party B, Brad, incurs any debt from borrowing activity without written consent from Party A, Sarah, or uses false information to obtain loans, all such debt shall be deemed Party B's unlimited personal responsibility. Party A and any assets owned by Party A shall be fully exempt from any payment obligation. I tossed the paper down in front of Brad. You forged my signature to borrow money, Brad. I have a handwriting analysis report right here. That triggers this clause immediately. Legally, I don't owe Tony here a single cent. This debt is yours alone, and you have no assets to pay it. The room fell into absolute silence. Only Brad's ragged breathing remained. Tony bent down, picked up the paper, and skimmed it. Apparently, he understood more law than I'd expected. He smirked, but not at me. He looked at Brad like a rotten piece of meat. So, Tony nodded and looked at me. You're not paying for him. No. I folded my arms, standing tall. But I have a better offer. One that gets you something back instead of walking away empty. Brad lifted his head, a tiny spark of hope in his eyes. He thought I was negotiating to save him. What offer? Tony asked. Him. I pointed at Brad. I don't care what you do with him. But before you drag him out, I need him to sign one last paper. If you help me force him to sign, I won't call the police about your illegal entry tonight, and I'll gift you $20,000 in cash from my safe as a travel fee. That $200,000? You can collect it from him any way you want. Brad screamed, Sarah, you're crazy! They'll kill me! I looked down at my husband, my eyes empty of love. No, Brad, you killed yourself the moment you picked up that pen and signed a loan shark contract. I'm just cleaning up the scene. I raised my eyebrows at Tony. So, 20 grand cash right now and freedom to deal with your debtor. Or you can wait for the police sirens that will be here in 5 minutes. Tony thought for 3 seconds. He spit on the floor next to Brad's Italian leather shoe. Deal. I like how you do business. Give me the paper. Tony signaled his guys. 2 large men yanked Brad upright, slammed him into a chair, and pressed his face down on the cold glass tabletop. Sign, you coward, Tony growled into Brad's ear. I pulled the last document from my jacket, the divorce petition and rights transfer. We didn't have kids, but it covered custody of the corgi he'd like to kick. Most importantly, it included his full confession of financial fraud. Sign, Brad, I said, handing him my expensive Mont Blanc pen. You have 60 seconds before I change my mind and let Tony smash your fingers instead of letting you hold a pen. 60 seconds, Brad, starting now. I tapped my index finger against my Apple Watch as the red countdown lit up the screen. In the wide living room, the sound of time felt amplified 1,000 times over, mixing with Brad's choking breaths. Tony's men held him down against the glass table, his cheek pressed to the cold surface, twisting in pain and humiliation. "What the hell are you doing?" Brad rasped, tears and snot streaking the face he used to polish every morning. "You're selling your husband to criminals? You're a demon." "A demon?" I let out a short, sharp laugh. "No, Brad, I'm karma, and karma always collects on time." I leaned close and whispered so only he and Tony could hear. "You think the only thing I have on you is the loan sharks? You think I don't know about the $50,000 you embezzled from your old real estate firm's fund before they fired you?" Brad's eyes blew wide, pupils tightening with pure terror. "Huh, how do you know?" I pulled a small silver USB drive from my pocket and dangled it in front of him. "You wonder why your old company never took you to court? Because they felt sorry for you? No, because of me. I found the hole in your books last year. I quietly paid the money back out of my personal account to keep your shredded reputation clean, hoping you'd change. But I kept every piece of evidence. Your emails instructing the accountant to falsify entries, the transfers into your personal account, and the recording of you bragging to your little side piece Tiffany about outsmarting those idiot bosses." I dropped the USB next to the divorce papers. "If you sign, admit to the affair, the financial fraud, and give up any claim to my assets, this USB disappears. I'll treat that 50 grand as the idiot tax I paid to learn what marriage really costs." Then I paused, my voice turning hard. "But if you don't sign," I looked at Tony. "After Tony takes care of you, I'll send this USB straight to the district attorney's office. You won't just have broken legs, Brad. You'll be looking at least 10 years for embezzlement and forgery. Choose. Walk out crippled or walk out a broke debtor." 40 seconds, I announced, cold. Brad thrashed, desperate. He looked to Tony for help, but Tony only shrugged, entertained like he was watching a soap opera. "Sign, idiot," Tony advised, his voice rough. "Your wife isn't wrong. I want money, not cops. If you go to prison, how are you going to pay me? Sign, and then we can go have a little discussion about your repayment plan." Discussion about repayment? A pretty phrase for selling labor or organs or God knows what. But it was still Brad's best option. "You can't do this to me. We loved each other," Brad sobbed, trying one last emotional trick. His wet eyes, eyes that used to make my heart stumble, now held nothing but cowardice and lies. 30 seconds, I said, unmoved. "Love died the day you stole my grandmother's necklace to give to that little gold digger. Remember? I bought it back from a pawn shop yesterday. You never even gave it to her. You pawned it for gambling money." The truth landed like a slap. Brad froze. He knew he had nowhere left to run. He'd been stripped bare in front of his wife, his creditor, and his own twisted conscience. 15 seconds, Tony barked, pressing the bat into Brad's side. "Sign! I don't have all night for your family drama." Brad's shaking hand wrapped around the Mont Blanc. Sweat dripped onto the clean white paper. Scratch, scratch. He signed. The signature was shaky, ugly, and pathetic, but legally valid. Brad dropped the pen, collapsing forward, a strangled sob caught in his throat. "Done," I said. I gathered the papers and the USB and checked his signature one last time. Perfect. Freedom. I stood, walked to the wall art, flipped it up, and opened the recessed safe. I pulled out 2 stacks of $100 bills totaling $20,000. I tossed them to Tony. He caught them one-handed like he'd done it 1,000 times. "Trash removal fee," I said. "And as agreed, he's yours. Get him out of my house. Now. And don't leave blood on the rug, it's expensive." Tony counted fast, then smirked, satisfied. He patted my shoulder, a strange show of respect between predators. You're something else, sweetheart. If your husband had half your spine, he wouldn't be drowning in debt. He signaled his guys. Two men hauled Brad up like a bag of garbage. Let's go, Brad. We've got a long night ahead, Tony said, hooking an arm around Brad's neck and dragging him to the door. Brad twisted to look at me one last time. His eyes were a mix of hatred, regret, and absolute terror. Sarah, you'll regret this. You'll be alone forever, he screamed weakly as they yanked him outside. I didn't move. I watched his pathetic silhouette disappear through the wrecked oak doorway. His yelling faded as a van door slammed. Then an engine roared and tires ground into the gravel, carrying my nightmare away. Silence returned. Only wind slipped through the broken frame. I took a long breath. The air suddenly felt cleaner. The cheap perfume, the booze, the lies. All of it was gone. I picked up the half-finished glass of red wine on the table, stepped out onto the porch, and watched the red taillights vanish at the end of the street. Alone? I murmured, taking a sip and tasting the sweet bite on my tongue. No, Brad, this isn't loneliness, this is peace. I pulled out my phone and called private security. Hi, I need a team here right now, full protection and a door replacement. And send an industrial cleaning crew too. I want this entire house sanitized before sunrise. I hung up and looked up at the star-filled sky. Tomorrow would be busy. Changing locks, returning the McLaren to the rental company and suing Brad for fraud to recover my deposit. And most importantly, starting a new life as a woman who was finally free and richer than ever. But first, I was going to sleep. The best sleep I'd had in 3 years. 14 months later, New York City in the fall was breathtaking. Golden leaves drifted down Park Avenue, reflecting honey-colored sunlight off the skyscrapers. I stepped out of the Plaza Hotel, filling my lungs with air that was crisp, free, and mine. The sign behind me still glowed, 2024 Successful Women Entrepreneurs Conference. Today, I wasn't just attending, I was the keynote speaker. My topic? Managing financial risk in marriage and business, a subject I paid for with 3 years of my life and became an expert in the hard way. In the 14 months since that night, everything changed. After the showdown, the divorce moved faster than I ever imagined. With Brad's signed confession of financial fraud, my attorney crushed the other side. Not that Brad could even afford a lawyer. He had a public defender. I kept everything: the house, the investments, and my name. I sold the suburban mansion, the place stuffed with toxic memories, and used the money to buy a penthouse overlooking Central Park. I was promoted to vice president at my firm, running a venture fund that backed startups founded by women. And Brad? I didn't go looking for news. I blocked him on everything. But the world is small, and rumors have wings. I heard Tiffany, the hot little gold digger, dumped Brad the very next day after she realized he was broke and being hunted by loan sharks. She even went on TikTok to expose him as a fake rich guy for clout. Trash attracts trash. As for Brad and Tony, I don't know details. I just know Brad didn't go to prison, which probably means he chose the work-it-off option with Tony, and I was willing to bet that was worse than a cell. The run-in. Your car, Miss Jenkins. The hotel's dispatcher snapped me back. A pearl-white Porsche Panamera purred up to the curb. I bought it myself with last year's bonus. No loans, no flexing, just earned. The driver door opened. A valet in a burgundy uniform, slightly too big, stepped out and bowed to make room for me. His baseball cap was pulled low, hiding half his face. His frame was thin. His shoulders hunched like he'd been carrying something heavy for too long. When I stepped closer to tip him, he lifted his face. Time stopped. Sunken eyes, dark circles, hair already threaded with gray, not even 40 yet. A long scar on his left cheek, faded but unmistakable. a souvenir of some lesson in the past. And his hands. The hands he used to manicure? Now they were rough, cracked, and stained with grease. It was Brad, my ex-husband. The man who once screamed at me for not handing him money to buy a supercar. The man who shoved me toward creditors to save himself. Now he was a valet, serving the very class he used to pretend he belonged to. Brad recognized me immediately. His whole body went rigid. Shock, shame, panic. All of it flashed in his eyes. He yanked the brim lower, trying to turn away. "Thank you for taking good care of it," I said. Calm. No mockery. No pity. Just the same tone I'd use with a stranger. Brad trembled. He stuttered, his voice rough. "Sarah, Ma'am, are you doing okay?" I met his eyes. I saw the begging. Maybe he hoped I'd yell, insult him, or toss him some charity. Any emotional reaction would prove I still cared, but I only gave him a polite smile. "I'm doing very well. Thank you." I opened my wallet and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. I held it between two fingers and offered it to him. He stared at it, then at me. His hand shook as it reached out, hesitating. The last scraps of pride wrestled with an empty stomach. In the end, hunger won. Brad took the bill. "Keep the change," I said, stepping into the car and closing the door. "And Brad?" I lowered the window just an inch as the engine hummed to life. "Next time. Read your employment contract before you sign it." I drove off. The Porsche glided away, leaving Brad standing in the smoke and glitter of New York. In the rearview mirror, I saw him still frozen there, gripping that $100 bill, head bowed, small and utterly alone. That was the sweetest revenge of all. Total indifference. He wasn't even worth my hatred anymore. He was just a ghost from my past. My story is over, but the lesson isn't. If you're in a relationship, or about to enter a marriage, burn these 3 truths into your memory. Love needs emotion, but marriage needs a contract. Never let romance blind you to financial reality. A prenup or clear asset transparency isn't a sign of distrust. It's a seatbelt that protects both people when an accident happens. Never underestimate the power of silence. When you discover betrayal, don't scream, don't fight, don't chase. Stay quiet and collect evidence. Your enemy exposes their weaknesses most when they think you're stupid and obedient. Let your revenge be a dish served cold. Your value is your capability, not luxury items. Brad tried to cover his emptiness with designer suits and supercars, and he lost everything. I built real value, and I have everything. Be the one who owns the car, not the one posing next to it. Thank you for following my escape from marital hell. I hope this story gives strength to anyone who feels trapped, used, or underestimated. Remember, you're stronger than you think, and justice waits at the end of the road if you're patient and smart. If you enjoyed Brad's ending and agree with how I handled it, then like this video right now to support me. Comment, "Justice served" below, so the YouTube algorithm pushes this story to the people who need to hear it most. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next blazing Karma Hits Back stories. See you in the next video. Stay smart, stay strong.